Moxley, and at the time of this case, she was living in Greenwich, Connecticut with her family, and she was 15 years old in 1975. Now, this community in Greenwich was in the community of Bellhaven, and this neighborhood specifically was one of the richest in America. Very wealthy, a gated and everybody's safe community. Martha's parents were David and Dorothy, and she had a brother named John. Now, they moved to this area from California when Martha and John were still young. And at the time of the case, Martha was a high school sophomore and a beautiful, sweet girl. She was everyone's friend. Everyone wanted to be her friend. Everyone wanted to meet her. She was kind. She was a good student, fun to be around. And I'll post pictures of her on our social media. She was a very, very sweet girl. Now let's talk about the people on this case. It's just a ride. Like, as I'm looking over my notes right now, like, I feel like it's a whirlwind taking you from start to finish. It's just insane. But before we go into the people, I want to talk about the night that she died. It's the night before Halloween 1975. A group of kids were going out on the night, and it was a night when kids in the neighborhood would pull pranks, have fun, just cause mischief, and it was called Hackers Night. Now, Martha leaves her home at about 7 p.m. that night. She left with some shaving cream and a carton of eggs, ready to just pull all those teenage pranks. Her mom originally wasn't going to let her go because she had been grounded, but she begged her mom to let her go. Please let me go, Mom. And her mom finally gives in and says, yes, she can go, but she has to be back by 10 o'clock. And as a mom, I cannot imagine making that decision and knowing what happens later to my daughter and just being like, oh, I wish I would not have let her go. I can't imagine that feeling. Now, Martha leaves with her, carton of eggs and her shaving cream, and she goes to the Skagel house. Now, this house was the home of Rushton and his two sons, Tommy and Michael. They were a very, very wealthy, very prominent family in this neighborhood, and the two boys, Tommy and Michael, were hosting a big Halloween party. Now, Martha originally goes with two other friends to this party, and it's thought that Martha and Tommy had a sort of relationship, like more of a flirtatious relationship up until that point. And at one point during the party, it's Martha leaves, and at first we aren't sure. I'm going to go into more theories later on, but for sake of the story, I'm not going to go into it. Martha leaves the home sometime supposedly around 9 o'clock. And the last time Martha's seen, the Skagel boys are leaving the party at the same time that she is. Tommy Skagel is the last person to see Martha alive, reportedly. Now, Martha never comes home that night, and once the 10 p.m. curfew comes and goes that her mother had set, Dorothy, her mom, gets very worried, very, very agitated. She starts calling around and finally calls the police. She calls her husband, David, who is gone on a business trip, and he starts heading home that area right away. Now, they call police, but police do not come that night. But the next day, at around 12:15 p.m. in the afternoon, a neighbor going across the Moxley's yard discovers a body. The worst nightmare situation. It's Martha Moxley laying face down in her family's yard underneath a large pine tree. She had been in the yard all along, and she was unfortunately dead. Her body was found bludgeoned to death. She was bruised and bleeding from stab wounds. There was a broken golf club, a 6-iron, laying by her body. Now, that broken golf club is believed to be the murder weapon. It was a rare brand, so that stood out to police right away. It had a huge, near her body, there was a huge 3-foot wide pool of blood also found in that area. However, going back to the golf club, it was missing the handle. Now, that's, of course, very suspicious, as that's where you can get the fingerprints. And that, of course, is something that police really needed and wanted to find, was that handle. Now, later on, we're going to find out that Michael Skagel had these golf clubs in his home, the same brand, the same rare brand. And in his collection of clubs, he was missing his 6-iron. Now, there was a name branded on all of the golf clubs, and it was the name of Michael and Tommy Skakel's deceased mother. So that also makes sense why the handle would have been taken with the killer, maybe if it was this same collection, to avoid police discovering the name of the Skakel family. Now, Martha Moxley's body is taken, and the medical examiner, Dr. Elliot Gross, couldn't give a precise time of death, but instead he gave a window of time where the crime could have taken place. He placed it as between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. that night. Now, another medical examiner hired by the Greenwich police named Dr. Joseph Jakimczyk, the chief medical examiner in the Harris County area, brought the time of death closer to 10 p.m. According to an article by the National Registry of Exonerations, Dr. Jakimczyk used evidence not found in Martha's body to come to this conclusion. Now, he said, allegedly, that Martha's mom heard barking around that time, and that's why he brought the time of death to that more narrow time frame of around 10 p.m. So nothing really about the body brought him to that conclusion, but more on there was a commotion in the family's yard around that time, so it must have been when she died, which that just doesn't feel very professional to me. I mean, as a medical examiner, I feel like you just need to look at the body in front of you, not other factors, but what do I know? I'm not a medical examiner. Now, right away, the Greenwich police brings Michael Skakel in for a short interview. Michael told them that Martha was at the party and they talked, but he said that he saw Martha with his older brother Tommy at around 9 p.m. and he said that Tommy and Martha left together, and Michael said that is the last time he saw Martha. Tommy is then brought in for a short interview, and Tommy said that Martha left at 9:30 and that he didn't follow her, but he stayed home. Now, Tommy is given 2 polygraph tests, and the first polygraph he took came back as inconclusive, but the second one came back with results that he passed, which is very interesting, but as we know, polygraphs can't be trusted, honestly, one way or another. Now, one thing to note, no search warrants were ever taken place for telephones, for the Skakel home, or even the Moxley home, or any vehicles. No search warrants were ever done on any Skakel house, vehicle, phones. Which just blah, blah, blah. I hate that. Like, I have so many feelings. Like, is it because they were rich? Is it because the Skakel father is such a prominent guy? Did he have the police in their pockets? That's speculation on my part. But that's just bad police work right there, honestly. Nothing really happened during the beginning of this investigation, and at least not right away. 2 years went by, and everyone in the neighborhood were beginning to scratch their heads. What was taking police so long? Now, the golf club that was found broken by Martha's body were traced, like I said, to the Skakel Golf Club collection. So, the murder weapon belonged to the Skakel family. Tommy and Michael were questioned in the beginning. They agreed to that lie detector test, but they both passed. And so police are kind of just like shrugging their shoulders and just, I don't know, moving on. The Moxley family, understandably, moved out of that area. They couldn't stay at the place where their daughter was murdered, which I can't blame them at all. I would leave so fast. And police kind of seem to push this homicide under the rug. There's just no sense of urgency, and life just seemed to go on. Except for, Martha, and I'm sure her family. Tommy Skakel goes to college, but that didn't work out for him. He flunked out and then had to return home. Now, Michael Skakel, he had run-ins with drugs and alcohol, and it left him desperately in need of rehab. His father put him in several different private institutions to try to get this under control. Now, it's while he's in one of these institutions during a therapy session that we find out he allegedly confessed that he murdered Martha Moxley that night. Now, fast forward to 1997. A man named Mark Furman is asked to look at the case, and so he just dives right in. He's intrigued. It catches his interest. and he's in on this case. Now, he was a former LAPD detective who worked on the O.J. Simpson case. Do you know that case? And he's blown away by the lack of competence by the Greenwich police and the lack of basically any investigation. Mark Furman points out that the police did a absolutely terrible job of protecting the crime scene on day one. At one point, there was no one even guarding or standing by the body, which is huge. There's no perimeter set up, so everyone's walking around the body, contaminating evidence, and it just spirals out of control for the officers the night of the murder. And that's what Mark Furman finds and is just appalled by, which I'm sure you guys listening are too, because I'm just heated as well. Now, Mark Furman is the one credited with pushing the case to fruition alongside his colleague Dominic Dunn, also goes by Mike Dunn, and he was a crime writer. Now, Mark Furman says that Martha Moxley was hit from behind on the right side of her skull with a tremendous force about only 150 feet away where she was later found. It's thought that it was a rage kill. She was likely caught off guard because there were no defensive wounds. Mark Furman also speculated that she was hit several more times before the golf club broke and her skull was bashed in, and the killer wasn't done. He stabbed her in the neck with that golf club handle and then dragged her body to where it would be later found. So it's just horrible, and it just makes me so sad for Martha and her family. Now, the murder's still unsolved. It's 1997. It had been over 2 decades. Still no justice for Martha, but Mark Furman, he's in there, you guys. He's in the trenches. He's not letting this go. He's determined to get justice for her. A secret report is leaked and sent to Mark Furman. Now we know that Dominic Dunn sent it to him. And this is where everything kind of just spirals out of control for the Skakel family. They couldn't control this. It's an 89-page document that was by the investigative firm Sutton Associates. And it had been paid for by Tommy and Michael's dad, Rushton Skakel. According to the documentary that I listened to and that I will link, it contains psychological evaluation by the Skakel kids. And at one point it said that Michael's impulse control was, quote, marginally adequate, end quote. It also contained witness interviews, statements, among many, many other things. And it had the Skakel boys' father's hand all over it. And it was thought that the Skakel family were trying to use this to try and, quote, orchestrate the outcome of the investigation, end quote. That's according to Mark Furman. Now, in this pages of documents, Tommy and Michael are caught in a lie. Tommy originally told police that he said goodbye to Martha at the door around 9:30, but that he stayed home. 19 years later, when the Sutton investigators, I'm really tripping over my words today. When the Sutton investigators are talking to him, he tells them that he was with Martha until 9:50 and said they had sexual relations with each other. Now, Michael's story also changed. He said he went to bed around 11:20 that night, but that changed to something else entirely. Michael said that he was roaming the streets of his neighborhood until around midnight that night. Michael said that he climbed up a tree in Martha's yard. He threw rocks at her window, but when he didn't come to the window, he said in his statement to the Sutton firm that he masturbated in the tree. I'll just leave that there. There's no need to expound on that. But he climbed down, and this is even more intense, as he's leaving the tree, like as he's climbing down the tree, Michael says that he saw something in the grass, but he really didn't stop to investigate it. He just threw like a stick at it, and then he just kept walking. Now, isn't it convenient that now Michael is saying he was all over the area where she was murdered, leaving all kinds of evidence, but now it's all explained away. Like, if there's semen found at the scene, now there's an explanation for it. He just jacked off in a tree, like, no big deal. That's convenient, isn't it? All evidence, obviously, is now pointing directly at Michael Skakel. Now, a grand jury is brought forth, and some witnesses come forth, But I want to super quickly touch on some other suspects because there were a few other